Greetings, everyone. I know a lot of you are worried about the recent decline in gold and silver prices, and some of you are even more worried that the crazed buying of precious metals that has occurred in several nations in the previous 2 weeks signals the market's peak. We are due for a bit of consolidation in metals prices. However, these pullbacks and price smackdowns that we are currently experiencing should not be seen as negative things, but as opportunities to get in if you have been waiting to buy or to grow your position if you feel like you have fallen behind on your purchases. I want to start this video by restating what I said a few weeks ago, for which I even took some blows in the comments. If you're new to my videos and want to catch up on what I've been talking about, I recommend watching my first 4 videos. Last week I showed on the channel what I've been tracking in terms of figures and patterns. On the other hand, the prices that I am seeing as reasonable projections for the future of silver are an average closing price of $60 per ounce and a maximum of $96 per ounce, with a tiny margin of error no later than 2027. As well as gold, which ranged from an average of $4,500 to over $5,800 per ounce. Let me give you an update on how much gold you need to be in the top 20%, 5%, and 1% of gold owners, so that everyone stays focused on getting the proper quantity of metals before the next level. I will also compare my calculations to those of Grok AI. Finally, we will go over the implications of owning that much gold, particularly for those who intend to use it to finance their retirement. I will discuss the amount of gold you should save up for retirement, taking into account a couple of pricing scenarios. Now, before we get into it, if you are looking for a reliable dealer to get gold and silver from at a fantastic price while also supporting my channel, I highly recommend summitmetals.com. Summit offers a consulting service, so if you're a high net worth people who wants a one-on-one approach to managing your stack and financial security, schedule a conversation with them today. New customers receive 5 ounces of silver at spot when they enter the code new customer at checkout. Regardless of your net worth, your business is vital. Plus, I'll include a link to that sale in the video's description. So, let's get down to brass tacks. What does it take to become a great gold stacker, and how does that translate into long-term success? To begin, I'd like to remind everyone watching that gold and silver are extremely rare metals. The Royal Mint estimates that only around 25 billion ounces of silver and 10 billion ounces of gold have ever been mined. There are only around 1.2 troy ounces of gold for every person on Earth right now, when we narrow our emphasis to gold specifically. I realize that may come as a surprise to some of you, but these are the figures that the experts have come up with, and they prove that in 2025, a little gold really does go a long way. It becomes much more problematic when one considers that, as I've stated in other videos, 59% of Americans do not have enough funds to handle an unexpected $1,000 expense, and the majority of people on the planet do not even earn $1,000 monthly. Given that $1,000 today will only purchase approximately 19 ounces of silver, or 24 milligrams of gold when measured at the spot price, even small quantities of precious metals are out of reach for the majority of individuals. Now that we've taken care of that little reminder, let's see how many individuals own gold in 2025 according to my estimations. So I won't bore you with a rehash of what I already discussed in a previous video. I'll just put a link to it in the video description below in case you're interested in seeing the whole breakdown of my process. Returning to the figures, I've made a few adjustments since my last discussion of this subject, but they still account for large and small owners. Here we may observe that 65 million people, or around 0.8% of the global population, currently own gold bullion in one form or another. If we exclude institutional holdings, bullion banks, and exchange-traded funds, the private ownership of gold bullion among these individuals is estimated to be over 350 million ounces. 5.5 troy ounces per stacker remain. Now let's jump right into the detailed analysis. The dollar worth of my stacks for top gold holders has surged, but they're still rather close to the last data I shared on the channel. However, at the present time, and this is based on my estimations, which will be compared to an AI model soon, you would need at least 15 ounces of gold, which is worth approximately $65,000, to be among the top 20% of gold owners on the planet. Having 51 Oz of gold, which is worth around $217,000, puts you in the top 5%. At today's current pricing, that equates to a total of $700,000 worth of gold bullion, which is slightly more than in my last video. To join the exclusive group, the top 1%, the creme de la creme of gold stackers, requires 165 ounces of gold. After reviewing my model's assumptions and output, I figured it was only fair to do what I did in my last top silver stacker video and compare my findings to those of X's Grok AI model. Over the amount of persons who hold gold bullion, Grok estimates 100 million, which is roughly double my calculation. This is an example of our disagreement over base assumptions. Even though I had a much lower estimate of privately held physical bullion than the Grok AI did, the amount of gold owned each gold stacker was quite similar in the end. Just as in the silver video, I requested that the Grok AI model remove ETF and other institutional holdings from these figures in case you were curious. Therefore, we are comparing like items here, which is gold stackers' actual physical bullion. This is the result it produced. For comparison, I've included my figures in the little text below. In contrast to my estimate of 15 ounces, the AI claims that only 2 to 5 ounces of gold are required to rank among the top 20% of gold stackers globally. As we go up the tiers, you'll notice that my figures are quite close to the AI's. According to Grok AI, a top 5% stacker needs at least 20 to 50 ounces of gold, when contrasted with my 52-ounce estimation. And according to the AI, if you want to be a top 1% stacker, you should have 100 to 250 ounces of gold, which is exactly what I have at 165 ounces. Please tell me in the comments what you think of my numbers compared to the AI model's numbers. Now, before we get into the next section of the video on the amount of gold you'll need for retirement, I want to take a moment to remind everyone watching this video about how scarce gold is and how many people will want it soon. Having even a small amount of gold is beneficial and will put you ahead of the typical individual who doesn't own any. It doesn't matter where you land on this pyramid. After we cover the top stacker data, let's move on to this week's viewer question, actually a comment, which I'm featuring. It comes from Blaine Stafford, who has been watching, and he mentioned how the information I've been sharing has helped with retirement planning. I love hearing that because, in my opinion, saving for retirement is the best reason to stack precious metals. The S&P 500 has underperformed gold since 2000, even after dividends are considered. What's more, gold really shines in times of crisis, like after a stock market crash or when the economy is very uncertain, as I've discussed in several videos recently. For thousands of years, gold has been a reliable investment, and I don't see that changing anytime soon. I often stress the need of including gold in your retirement plan. In the US, this translates to having more than $700,000 in life expenditures once you stop working. That leaves you with nearly half of that amount to live in the average US state and probably anywhere else in the English-speaking Western world, where the majority of my viewers are from. After subtracting about $2,000 in monthly Social Security payments. For the purpose of this exercise, we will assume that you need $250,000 in liquid investments to supplement a very basic retirement, which, by the way, is still better than what most people will receive. In order to be consistent with what we did in the silver retirement video, and to acknowledge the fact that many Americans retire and rely only on Social Security. As we go over these figures, please have that in mind, because new statistics show that median 401k retirement savings in the US are still significantly underfunded, which is concerning because I wrote about this subject for silver a few months ago. I would be surprised if people in the majority of nations feel the same way. And what we can see from this table on the screen is that even with record gold prices, the top 20% of gold stackers, those with 15 ounces of gold according to my calculations, still don't have enough to cover a modest retirement. And that's before we even consider the median 401k balance for people nearing or already in retirement age. 64%, or approximately $160,000 of the $250,000 I said you need as a minimum to cover retirement. Fortunately for those of us who put our money into gold, we know that the metal's value is rising relative to many of the things we purchase on a daily basis. And I know, although this isn't the best example of a retirement video, I believe I adequately displayed it when I showed you the dollar to gold and silver to silver price shift of an iPhone from its 2007 introduction to its September 2025 launch. Keep buying gold as central banks incorporate it into their balance sheets instead of US dollars, knowing that its value will rise as confidence in fiat currency in these institutions declines. In order to account for my projected gold price of $5,800 per ounce in 2026 and 2027, I have revised these calculations. However, even after adjusting the price of 15 ounces of gold, the minimum amount required to cover 15 and a half years of retirement, the results remain largely unchanged across all age groups, with individuals nearing retirement age having only 73% coverage after accounting for 401k holdings. So I hope this helps those of you who are counting on higher prices to save you. Actually, at the price objective I've mentioned, you won't come close to meeting my minimal requirements for retirement and a median 401k balance until you reach 25 ounces of gold. What this means is that you will require somewhat more than a tenth of an ounce of gold every month in retirement, based on the number of months you hypothetically need to cover. In conclusion, if you are 50 years old or younger today and are concerned about your ability to live comfortably in retirement on Social Security alone, it may be prudent to purchase a tenth of an ounce of gold on a regular basis until you retire. This will provide you with a buffer against the financial hardships that may arise during your golden years. So, now that we've gone over the figures and my belief that 25 ounces of gold is a great goal to reach in order to save for retirement, I want to address some concerns that I'm sure to encounter in the comments area. What if I have a longer life expectancy? That's the first one. That is totally doable, and I hope it is for all of my viewers here right now. I should also mention that it's conceivable you might require more money each month to meet your expenses, particularly if your standard of living is higher. Finally, I'd like to mention that the gold price could rise significantly beyond the aim I've set in this video. I don't just think it's feasible, I think it's highly probable. Do not take this as a signal to ignore logic and reason. Think about your current circumstances, your expected lifespan, your spending habits, and the lowest price point you believe gold can reach. Make a strategy that works for your life based on the worst-case scenario for gold prices, not your ideal price. However, keep these figures in mind as you work on it because, once again, I believe that having 25 ounces of gold is an excellent beginning point and an absolute necessity. Another way to look at it is that you should have at least a tenth of an ounce of gold for every month you intend to be retired. If purchasing a tenth of an ounce of gold to meet your retirement expenses per month is still too much to ask, I understand and appreciate that. My recommendation is to begin with purchasing 1 gram of gold per month. However, it is imperative that you begin immediately, as I have shown in my previous videos and through the use of this chart in this video, that it is a crucial component of a retirement portfolio. Having even a small amount is preferable to none at all, particularly in the event that your national pension program or Social Security, or equivalent in other countries, runs out of funding and you are left to shoulder the full burden of your retirement expenses independently. Having said that, I would greatly appreciate it if you could share your thoughts in the comment box below on my calculations and strategy regarding the use of gold for retirement. Plus, if you liked what you saw, hit that like button. Doing so signals to the algorithm that you would like this movie to be recommended to others. Please don't be shy about sharing this video with anyone you believe will benefit from seeing or hearing this message. Doing so will help my channel develop. Please remember to take care of one another and yourself, as I always say at the end of my films. Goodbye until the next video.